It is 2:00. Welcome to everyone who's here. This is Volunteer for Israel's VFI Educates program today. If you don't know, Volunteers for Israel is the only American nonprofit organization that facilitates civilians volunteering on Israel Defense Force bases to help the country and the soldiers. So if you are interested in volunteering and you have not, please message me in the chat. My name is Ilana Blumenthal. If you have any questions during the program, feel free to put it in the chat. And our speaker, Sharona Liman, who I'll introduce in 1 second, will be happy to answer them after the program. I will be putting everyone on mute during it. So if there's anything very important, just, again, shoot me an individual chat. Sharona, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let me just, I know.
Hiding beneath the
so
trees.
Usually Sharona has been a presenter many times at our programs, and usually we can see her, but she's just moved today and the camera's not working at her mother's computer. So we'll be able to hear her. You can see the Mount of Olives, and she'll be sharing her presentation. So let me just give a little introduction in case you have not met Sharona. Sharona Liman's parents emigrated from Philadelphia to Israel in 1963, where she was born and raised a Sabra. After finishing her military service, she entered into a Land of Israel Studies program at the Beit Brill Teachers College. She received a BED and her official tour guide certification from the Ministry of Tourism in 1995 and has been a tour guide ever since. A passionate lover for Israel, she specializes in history and archaeology. So thank you so much for returning, Sharona. In case anyone doesn't know, this is a Pay What You Can program. I'll put the information below. But Sharona, please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, can you see it full screen now?
Yes, I'm going to mute everyone. So if you get muted, just unmute. So you're muted. So we'll just need you to unmute. Sharona?
Oh. Just stop share in order to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, now you can hear me and see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, more than 100 plants are mentioned in the Tanakh. Most of them are a symbol to something. Most of them, the minute they're mentioned, the people who heard their name at that time understood more meanings beyond just the name. They knew the height, they knew the shape of the leaves, they knew the water requirements, they knew the season that that plant is blooming. So in most cases, just by saying a name of a plant, there's a whole world that was open, especially to people who lived in this land, and most of them were farmers living outside in nature, being in daily contact with nature, seeing the seasons pass. So there's a lot more meaning. A few plants are just part of the story, but in most cases, they're just symbols. Obviously, in this presentation, we are not going to cover all 100 of them. One of the major problems is we're not sure about the identification of all the 100. There are some, like the olives that are in my background or in your foreground, that we never stop knowing what olives are. All through the Second Temple period and the Mishnah and the Talmud and Middle Ages, there was always a clear identification what an olive is. So there's no doubt about it. But there are others that along the way, sometimes already in Second Temple period, sometimes in the Middle Ages, as further people, the people of Israel went from the land of Israel, and they did not know the vegetation, did not know the flora, and they only knew what was in France, like Rashi, or in Spain, like the Rambam. They started arguing, is this plant or that plant or the other? The names were not clear. If you look at translations to the Bible, through any language, whether it's Latin, English, whatever. Many times the translators don't know what a plant means, and just for the comfort to make things easier for the readers, they would take a plant that from northern Germany, and that would make understanding the Bible a lot more difficult. You have to go to the Hebrew origin, and you have to go to the land. So let's go to the beginning. Okay, we're talking about the first Tuesday on earth, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit, and trees on the earth bearing fruit after their kind, with seed in them. And it was so. This is the good day. This is the day that God said twice it was good. This is the beginning of life. Till now we had light and darkness. Till now we had the water and the sky. This is only objects, okay? But now this is the beginning of life. In order for Thursday with the animal, and of course Friday for man, you need to start with the vegetation. And the vegetation, when it comes to the connection with man, in the beginning it is said that the main purpose of vegetation is for people to eat. That anything that is growing, all the flora is with seed and for people to be eating it. Immediately after that, we will discover that that is not all true. Because first of all, among the two trees in the Garden of Eden, there are two that, although they have seed and they have fruit, we're not allowed to eat, specifically. And we don't know what they are. None of us. Not the tree of knowledge, not the tree of life. Many, many, many years later, Italian artists will draw big pictures of Adam and Eve and an apple. And therefore, in our minds, in our Western minds, when we say the fruit of wisdom, we immediately think of apple, but the name apple isn't written here. And not because the Bible doesn't know apple. We will see later on in the Song of Songs, there is an apple. And it's the apple that we know of today. So it's only because of Renaissance Italian painters that we think so. Before us, before that, nobody thought of that. So what is the fruit of wisdom? They ate, their eyes opened, they realized they're naked, and they took fig leaves. If you think like a lawyer, and I'm sure in a group of 34 Jews, I'm sure there's a lawyer or two, circumstantially, they're seeing a situation and they're going to the next leaf they see. So maybe the fruit of wisdom is a fig. This is, by the way, my now 16-year-old son. This was taken 10 years ago when he was in first grade, and they were acting out chapter 2 in Genesis as they began learning the book. So one way of seeing it, they were already standing next to the fig. I have eaten many figs in my life. This is one of my favorite fruits when it's fresh off the tree, not the dried version from Turkey for Tu Bishvat. Can I say that I'm wiser from eating the tree? I can't tell you. Another option why they chose the fig, if you know the plants of Israel, the most famous ones of them, you understand that this is almost the only option. Because if you look at the almond leaf or the olive leaf, there's not much to cover there. If you look at the palm leaf, you understand that it totally doesn't make sense, right? So the fig is the first option in the first minute. But as we know, after 2 hours, it shrinks, it withers, and it becomes almost as small as an olive leaf, and it doesn't make much sense. And therefore, one version, chapter 3 in Genesis, God already taught them how to hunt and how to use animal hide. And if any of you ladies needed an explanation why we need to change clothes every 2 hours, it goes all the way back to Eve that had to change their fig leaves every 2 hours when they shrank. And then, because of eating from the fruit of wisdom, and Adam and Eve are thrown out of the Garden of Eden, we already see that there are other plants that are not to be eaten, and they don't have seeds and fruits that we can enjoy. Thorns and thistles, not a specific type. It's a very general name, just anything that hurts us and is not fruitful, and it's in our field. Which field? It says, in the sweat of your brow you should eat food. The Hebrew version says, Beze'at afecha tochal lechem. You should eat bread. That's the source, the origin. You should eat bread. Therefore, what we see here is actually wheat. What it means is wheat. So immediately after the fig, which is the first mentioned by name, we have the thorns and the thistles that are general, and food meaning wheat. And then we go to the next episode, and it's Noah's Ark, and it's made out of gopher wood. We have absolutely no idea. The word gopher is not in English. They actually took and transliterated. They copied the word from Hebrew. It says in the Hebrew, etz gopher. And we don't know what it is because it appears only once or twice, and we don't have what to compare it to. And in our understanding today, we don't know which tree in Israel or in the Middle East, in the ancient East, it refers to. One other tree in the Bible is mentioned only once. It's called the almond wood. And again, this is almost direct transliteration. The origin in Hebrew says etz almog. We use the word almog today for a coral reef. So the word totally changed its meaning, and we don't know what it is. But going back to Noah's Ark, take off the almog from the screen. And we know that in Noah's Ark, the heroes are the fauna, the animals. And 2 by 2, they all go in. And it doesn't mention that he brought any plants. What did they eat? We have no idea. There's no mention of storages, of enough room on the ark for the food for all the animals. It's a question mark. And then at the end of this portion, Noah sends the dove, and it brings up a freshly plucked olive leaf. For the listeners of the Bible who live in Israel, they know that this means that the water is low, because the olive tree, even the most developed, even one that is 600-700 years old, which is about the age that olive trees can get to, it's never too high. It's not a cypress, it's not a palm, it's definitely not a cedar. Okay? Oaks are bigger. Now here we have my ex-husband, okay, and he's 1.80 meters. And this is a well-developed olive tree. So you can see this is the maximum height of a tree. If the dove brought a leaf from this, we know that the water is already low. Why symbolically this leaf? Think about it. The whole world has been destroyed. We erased everything and we're beginning from scratch. In the first version, in Genesis, in chapter 1, what was the first thing that was created? Let there be light. So after the world is destroyed by the flood, what is the first thing that is created? Let there be light. Okay? So it's also, it has more symbolism than just the olive leaf that decorates our emblem of the state of Israel today and represents peace. So they go out of nowhere, Noah is already a farmer. And he already knows the secret of fermenting fruit and creating alcohol. And he plants a vineyard, and he drank some of the wine and became drunk. So this is the fourth plant mentioned in the Bible. And from this point on, it will be a superstar. The vine is mentioned more than any other plant. And if you know, the Hebrew skit with Uri Zohar back from the beginning of the 70s of the Bible quiz, is it Geffen or Gaffen? It really makes sense, because from all the plants of the Bible, they would choose this one because it is the one mentioned the most times. So what have we had till now? We're just past a few chapters. The world was created, destroyed, Noah's Ark, okay? We already have the fig, we already have the wheat, we already have the olive, and we already have the grapes. 4 out of the 7 chosen species of Shiv'at HaMinim, the one we celebrate on Shavuot, the only ones that were allowed for ritual in the temple, to give the ma'aser, to give the tax to the priests in the temple, was only from these 7 species. And we take these 3, the ones that are in the frame, they are in higher hierarchy than the other 4. To the fact that, first of all, they have different names. Except for saying Geffen and Chita and Zait, we also call them Dagan, Yitzhar, V'Tirosh. Dagan is all the grain. Tirosh is grape juice. It's not wine, but it means the wine. Yitzhar is a name for oil. Now, the Hebrew listeners will know that Yitzhar seems like Tzohoraim, like afternoon, when the sun is the highest, or the word Tzohar, which is like a window where the light comes in. So the main use for olives in biblical times was actually for the light, for the oil. Less for eating, less for cooking, mostly for the light. You have to think of it as today's electricity. People had, think about it, December, it's dark already by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. People had to have the olive oil, not only in the temple in Jerusalem, but in everyday life, for medications as well, for other things. We know that these 3 are the highest hierarchy because they appear on our Shabbat table every week. We bless the candles, which is olive oil, and we bless the challah, which is the grain, and we bless the wine every Friday. So they have their place of honor. So the 7 species, okay, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranate, olive oil, and honey. We understand the honey as to be the dates. And as we said before, the only ones acceptable offerings in the temple. Look at the stamps of the state of Israel dedicated to the 7 species. Okay, why these and not others? What it unifies these? I'm going to put the wheat and barley aside and refer to the 5 trees out of the 7 species. And what is common to all of them is that the flowers bloom in the spring. And spring in Israel is a very, very difficult season. It's very, you can have a heat wave one day and then rain the other day. You can have an east wind, which is very dry, and then a flood a day later. Very, very unstable season, and it's very challenging for all these flowers. If it's too hot, if the wind comes from the east, they can wither and dry. If suddenly it's raining, all the pollen is destroyed. It's very, very challenging. These trees manage to pass this challenge. And that is why they are in the 7 species and not others, which I will shortly give 2 examples. So I gave here a biblical sentence that talks about the fig tree that forms its early fruit and the blossoming of the wines. And I gave the picture of the blossom of the olive tree, which is between March and May, exactly in the months of the spring. I put this picture specifically because I, like other Ashkenazi Jews, not the Arabs living in Israel, not Jews from Arab countries, very allergic to the pollen of this is what gives us the hay fever in the spring. The 7 species are so unique that it appears in the language as well. You know, the language is a mirror to the culture. Like the Eskimos have 70 different names for ice and snow, and we Jews have 70 different names for Jerusalem. And we Israelis don't have a word for tak because it's not part of our culture, but we do have a different word for the harvesting of each one of the species. So katzir is the 2 grains. It's the wheat and the barley. And for the palms, it's gadid. For the olives, it's masik. Ariyah for the figs comes from the word light, or, because you always pick the figs first thing in the morning. If you come in the afternoon, if you come in later hours, the figs that were ripe today were already eaten by the birds. If you want to come before the birds, it has to be first thing in the morning in the first light, or rishon, and that is why it's ariyah. The grapes of Batzir, and only the pomegranate has the same name that you would use today for other fruits. The word katif, maybe some of you even volunteered with katif, it is used today for all the other fruits like oranges, like persimmons, like peaches, any other fruit. And these words became very important, again, symbolic. If somebody is very successful, we use this word katzir, that he harvested success, to katzar hatzlacha. And that's a matter of quantity, for instance. If you want to talk about quality, if you want to say that something is very unique in its quality, you use the word batzir. Like you would use the wine of year such and such was a very successful wine. It was very high quality. So if we talk about the kids of 1967, okay, there are kids of a good harvest, batzir meshubach. Right? Which tree is not in the 7 species? For instance, the carob. Although it is all over Israel, the fruit, according to the legends, you can live 12 years only on the fruit of the carob. It is very nutritious, very tasty, very healthy. But in fact, not only it is not in the 7 species, it's not even in the Bible at all. It is mentioned in the New Testament, in the Mishnah many times, not even once in the Bible. So we're going to pass on. The shaked, the almond tree, very nutritious, very healthy. It heals you. It is the fruit of choice when Jacob had to send gifts down to Egypt, and he wanted to show the best things of the land of Canaan. Among other things, he sent almonds. And when people had in the desert had a problem with Aaron being the priest, they said, "Why only your brother? Maybe somebody from another tribe should be a priest. Let's try." And Moses gives them the test. He tells them to give all the sticks, all the staffs of the heads of the different tribes, 12 tribes. And then the next morning, it was only the staff of Levi, of Aaron, not only sprouted, but budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. In one night, went through all the process, the whole cycle, very, very quickly, and we'll see very shortly why. And referring to that also, the hastiness, the effectfulness. Okay, Jeremiah, what does Jeremiah see? He sees a branch of shaked, anaf shaked ani ro'eh. Why is that? Because the word shaked in Hebrew comes from shakdan, somebody who works very quickly, who works very efficiently, who a student, a pupil, elementary school pupil who comes back from school, eats lunch quickly, and immediately sits down and does all his homework. That's a shakdan. Okay? Very, very studious. So you would think with all these great qualities, these beautiful stories that the shaked is mentioned in the Bible, the beauty of the tree itself. And by the way, this is the only tree that has a name in male and in female. Along the year, when it's green and plain with no flowers, just the leaves, we call it shaked. During February, during the month of Shvat, when it becomes so pink and beautiful, it's so beautiful it cannot be a male. We call it shkedia in the feminine form. And then it goes back to being male again when all the flowers drop off. So with all these good qualities, why is it not part of the species, the 7 species? Because the blossom is in the winter, when it's easier. It's cold and it's rainy, but it's stable. It's not the spring. And that is why it is not included in the 7 species. Let's go to the one plant that is included both in the 7 species and in the 4 species. We mentioned before the honey is understood by most scholars as the date honey, the silan, and also the branches of palm trees in the 4 species of Sukkot. The palm tree is one of the most, the trees that we take most benefit of, because there's not even one piece of it that we don't take advantage. From the roots to the top, in all seasons and all parts. So this reading here is taken from Bamidbar Rabbah. It's a commentary book as part of the halacha. But let's take it in our language and understand it. So obviously the first thing is the very sweet fruit of the dates. Then you have the one leaf in the middle that comes out and it's still closed that we use for the lulav, for the 4 species of Sukkot, for the blessing. Then you have the other leaves, the palms, that we use for covering our sukkah. And in ancient times, people made roofs out of it. This was one of the main sources of roofs. Then from the trunk, you have like little strings that come out that you can actually make ropes out of. The special branches that hold the fruit can be made into sieves, can be made into baskets. The bark itself, the trunk itself, is used for pillars. Think about, we're talking about people who were nomadic, 40 years in the desert. Even after they settled, they must have seen tents, they must have built tents. Not everybody had a home. Same branches that were used for the sieves, the branches that hold the fruit, can be used as a broom. Every palm leaf is spine, and the little leaves from the side. So from the leaves from the side, you can make a different kind of baskets. By the way, this is a photo that I took in Sinai 6 months ago. It's not something from an ancient culture. It's something that is recent, that is being done today by the Bedouins all the time. And even the pits of the fruit are being fed to the animals. Not even them go to waste. Every part we can benefit, every part we can take advantage of. It's a very blessed tree. We are blessed to have the palm tree. So because of all its benefits and because of its nice shape, it sort of looks like a flower. It has a stem and a nice bloom, and it's very symmetrical, and it's so beautiful. It also became a symbol of beauty and a symbol of the land. Symbol of the land. We can see it, both the Jews in Israel and the enemies, when they want to symbolize the whole land of Israel in a small thing like a coin, they take the palm. The Great Revolt, the Bar Kokhba Revolt, two national revolts against the Romans, we use the palm to show that this is a coin of Judea. The Romans beat Judea at the end of the Great Revolt, the very famous Judah Capta coin, again with a palm tree. Now, we, modern Israel today, we want to show that we are going back to our sources. We're not newcomers. We renew names of places and habits. And one of the things we love the most is renewing ancient coins. And our 10 shekels of today is the same coin of the Great Revolt with the palm tree, very fruitful in the middle. And we can see it also in many, many mosaics. This is the Meidva map showing the area of Jericho, just north of the Dead Sea. This is the Jordan River. This is the Dead Sea. How do we know that it's a Dead Sea? The fish that has reached the Dead Sea is reversing, going back upstream in the Jordan, not to die in the very salty water. Another mosaic from a synagogue. We see here from Ma'on. We see here palm trees next to other Jewish symbols like the menorah, like the Lion of Judah, etc., etc., the symbol of the land. And also a symbol of beauty, and usually a feminine beauty. We go to the Song of Songs. The woman is the palm, and the man is like the cedar. And the whole Song of Songs, this theme repeats itself. The love story between a man and a woman, the love story between a palm and a cedar. Now think about it. They don't live in the same climate. The cedar needs the cold. It needs the frost. It needs even snow. It lives on high mountains in Lebanon. And the palm needs the heat, and it needs the desert, the oasis, but still the desert. Putting them together is an achievement. We know about King Solomon, that in his garden he had both cedar and palm. He also had 1,000 wives. One was the daughter of the king of Lebanon. One was the daughter of Pharaoh. Each of them brought their plants from their homeland, but he managed to have in his garden both of them. And the Bible makes sure to mention that because it's rare. You usually don't have these together. Now, this photo taken in Neot Kdumim, it's difficult to get this picture of palms and cedars together. The palms are growing quite well in Neot Kdumim. The cedars are having problems. It's not cold enough for them. So it's quite an achievement. So for a palm and a cedar to love each other, that shows us how strong that love is. The cedar went down from the north, the palm went up from the south to meet somewhere in the middle. That is the strength of love. Okay, and once again, a symbol of beauty. It decorates also a Crusader pillar, Catholics from Europe, and a Muslim oil lamp. So everybody agrees that the palm is beautiful. The four species, going back to them. So we determined already that what is the branch of a palm. Okay. The next one is quite easy, the willow. We know exactly which tree is the willow. There's no question about it. There's not too much not to understand here. And here we have two others. the fruit of a splendid tree, and root of a leafy tree. What are these? We don't have a name of a type, a name of a specific plant. So here it opens up a whole range of understanding and commentary. Just to say, I'm sure all of you know about it, or most of you know about it, that the 4 species have either both smell and taste, or just smell, or none at all. And that has to do with good deeds or being learned in the Torah. So some people in Israel are both. Some people only do good deeds. Some people are only learned, and some people are just plain. What is the splendid fruit? Today we use the etrog, the citron. Probably when the Hebrew Bible was written, it wasn't that, because citrons come from Far East, from somewhere between China and India. In the Second Temple period, we already had citron in Israel. By the time Alexander the Great, 3rd century, beginning of 4th century BC, reached India, on his way back, he already brought citrons. Alexander Yanai, the Hasmonean king, when he tried to do something during Sukkot that the crowd didn't like, they stoned him. They threw the etrogim on him. So Second Temple period, we already had this fruit in Israel. First Temple period, when the Bible was originally written, we did not have it. But all the scholars today agree about the citron. Why can it not be the pomegranate, which is such a splendid fruit? Because the tree itself is plain. Why can it not be the carob, which is a wonderful tree that gives shade and it's green all year round and it's a beautiful tree? Because the fruit is not splendid enough. So you either have the fruit or the tree. With the citron, it is both. The tree is beautiful. It gives fruit almost all year round, as opposed to other trees that only have one season. And the fruit itself is wonderful. What about the leafy tree? Today, we agree that it is Hadas, a myrtle. Again, the Bible doesn't mention it, and it does mention Hadas. We'll see it soon in many, many other occasions. They knew this plant. Why is it mentioned in the 4 species? We're not sure. But this is the understanding that we have today. Hadas symbolizes a period of success. If we have in the desert the cedar, which we said before needs the cold and the snow, and the olive, which needs tending, together with the myrtle, it means that this is a good time for the people of Israel, that the enemies are not harassing, that it's peaceful, that people can put enough effort to grow in the desert things that shouldn't grow in the desert originally, like the myrtle. Myrtle needs the Mediterranean forest. So Isaiah uses it as a symbol of success. If instead of a thorn bush, you have the juniper, and instead of the breeze, you have the myrtle, okay, the first 2 are a symbol of failure, of a time of being conquered by an enemy, but it's a time that there's weakness and disorder, as opposed to the juniper and the myrtle that show us success. To the point that, again, brachot, this is out of the Bible, it's a commentary that's later, that tells us that if somebody dreams of a myrtle at night, they will be successful. And if he doesn't have his own property, they will inherit it very shortly. So those of you who don't trust the banks and their business, make sure to look and smell at myrtles all day long to have them in your dreams at night. That can assure you success. Another symbolism of the four species is they actually show us our way from wandering to settling and succeeding. The palms, of course, symbolize the desert. The willow that always lives on the banks of a river symbolizes crossing the Jordan. The myrtle symbolizes the success of conquering the land. And finally, settling in the land, being peaceful in the land, being fruitful, that is the etrog, the citron. So they also have more symbolism when they come together and they come in this specific order. Going back to Genesis, in the beginning, we were told that the trees were only invented by God or created by God for the fruit. Living in Israel today, with the heat waves that we are having, with the climate crisis that we're having, the first thing that I think of when I think of trees, except for climbing on them, is the shade. And we see that even 4,000 years ago, way before the climate crisis, people in Israel need the shade above all. And we have several occasions having to do with Abram about the shade. He sits in his tent, he sees the three angels coming, he sees the three messengers, and of course, he will serve them the meal under the tree. Come and rest, wash your feet, and rest under the tree. Not even in the shade of the tent, because you want the shade of a tree. It's much cooler than any artificial shade before air conditioning. Then, after a year after this royal visit of these three messengers, Sarah has a son. And then begins the rivalry between Sarah and Hagar, between Isaac and Ishmael, to the point that under Sarah's pressure, Abrams sends Hagar and Ishmael to the desert. And they're walking around and they're out of water, and Hagar is hopeless, and she puts the boy under one of the bushes. There's not enough room there. There's not enough shade there for both of them. And he must be a young boy still to manage to squeeze himself in underneath. And I'm sure those of you who hiked in the desert know that feeling, that you're looking for a centimeter of shade, even if your whole body cannot go in, but if your head can be in the shade, if you lie down in a certain position. We once had a hike, we had 40 people, and in the midst of the afternoon, we actually told people to lie down under salt bushes like that, just to make sure that their head is in the shade for 10 minutes. And finally, one of the very, very first connections of Abram to the land, before he buys the cave of Machpelah, before he buys a piece of land, the first tree that we know that he planted, the eshel, the tamarisk, in Beersheba. What you see here in the picture is an eshel tree, a tamarisk, which is in Beersheba, next to a well that traditionally is called Abrams well. If you ask scientists and archaeologists, it cannot be Abrams well, but we don't argue with tradition. So the proximity between a well and this tree, although it cannot be 4,000 years old, makes everybody gather next to it and adore it as Abram's tree, and at least read the phrases from the Bible that talk about planting a tree. And why does he need to plant a tamarisk? We don't eat its fruit. We don't build from its branches. The only thing we benefit is the shade. But in the desert, that is priceless. In Beersheba, there's nothing like shade. Going on, other people in the Bible needed shade, not only Abram. Jonah, after doing his task, finally, and he goes out of Nineveh, and he sits in the shade, and he waits to see what will happen in the city. And the Lord provides him a Kikeown, Once again, the word here, Kikeown, that's the word in the Hebrew Bible. And we're not sure exactly what it is. Today, most scholars say that Kikeown is the castor oil plant, which is not a beautiful plant at all. It doesn't give that much shade, really. It's sort of like the bushes in the desert. Very, very poisonous fruit if you eat it as is. Today it grows in places in Israel where the land has been disturbed. If there's been a construction site that has been deserted, if there's been a landfill in places that the nature is not at its best, that's where the castor oil plant grows. So it's not really, if you can say so, a worthy tree, a valuable tree. But it gives them shade. And then when that tree disappears, Jonah is heartbroken and in despair. Oh, we're not sure what it is. Maybe it's this tree. Gave him a little bit of shade. And why are trees adored? To the point that sacrifice is done beneath the tree, because the shade is pleasant. So although the trees were created, as we were told, for the fruit, the shade finds its way into the Bible. So talking of sacrifice and talking about little shade, one of the most famous stories that has the most trees in one story is the parable of Yotam. Sorry, I need to have a sip of water, just a second. Right. After the story of Gideon, when, forgot the name of the member of Avimelech, I think, I don't remember the name. If anybody remembers, you can write it in the chat. Wanted to be king, and he was not a good king. And Yotam has his parable. Let's see, who's our choice? Can it be somebody fruitful like the olive, like the fig, like the grape? And all these said, we don't want to deal with politics. We don't want to waste our time in politics when we are being industrious, when we are being fruitful, we are giving so much more benefit doing our own business. And only the thorn bush, who wasn't giving any benefit at all, said, okay, I will be king. And then he said, take refuge in my shade. And again, if you look at the atad, which this is the word that the Bible uses, tad, and most scholars think it's this bush today. It doesn't have any shade, and you can't come close to it because it's so thorny. The little shade that it has, you have to be so attached that you're hurt by the thorns. We're not going to go into Israeli and American politics today, but I'm sure each of you can find and understand, can see an example of politicians today in both of our countries that are very much like the thorn bush, like the atad. We mentioned already Song of Songs, one of the books in the Bible that has the most trees. The theme is the love story between the palm and the cedar. But whoever wrote this song knew a lot about nature, spent a lot of time in nature, looking at nature, finding symbolism, finding, attaching feminine and male characteristics to all kinds of plants. So, for instance, the woman is the rose of Sharon. She is the lily of the valley. And the man is like an apple tree. We say, this is what it says, Katapuach ben Atzayal, like the apple tree among the forest. This is the name specifically. So we see the Bible does know how to say apple when it wants to. And once again, the light and the shade, not only the fruit. I went down to the grove of nuts. Why does he have to go down? Because the nuts need the chill, not of being on the top of the mountain, the frost that comes at night to low places. El ginat egoz yaradeti, I went down to the grove of nut. The person who wrote that knew his nature, have seen the frost crawl into the low places at night, and seen the nut trees being more fruitful in those places that get the frost. All the perfumes and smells and scents and aromas. The Song of Songs is the most aromatic book that, most aromatic chapters that we have in the Bible. It's like going into a spice shop, and you're attacked with these different smells from all directions. And here's another example of a plant that only appears once, and in this case, we do know what it is, the saffron. Because it is so precious, people remembered what it is all through the ages, and this is the one time it appears in the Bible. The vines, again, if you have a chapter with many, many plants, of course, the vine will appear. The pomegranates and the mandrakes, several times appearing in always as a symbol of love, always as a symbol of mating and being very, very fruitful. So just look at what did I just press? Sorry about that. What this slide looks like, and this is just from a book that has 4 chapters. Every phrase there tells us that the love story between that boy and that girl happened outdoors, all year round, in the nature of Israel, touching the ground, smelling the air. It is a love story to the land, to the nature of the land, as much as it is a romance between a man and a woman. The next book that uses as many plants, it's the book with the most plants. It's just much, much longer than the Song of Songs. So Isaiah has so much more chance to use so many names of different plants. Isaiah was a farmer. We know that, for instance, chapter 5, which I did not bring here, the story about the vineyard. And he goes and tells in each detail, every work, every chore, every toil, everything that has to be done in order to harvest grapes. And that is not something that you just memorize. That is something that he knows from within. He lives in nature. And therefore, so many of his parables have to do with the plants. And again, he speaks about, if you know, Isaiah has like 2 parts. The first part is predicting the destruction. And the second part of Isaiah is already comforting us and speaking of hope and redemption. So when he prophesies for destruction, he talks about, for instance, the tumbleweed. And you can just see it like a Western, like a ghost town with this wheel just turning in the dust and turning in the wind. And I'm showing you my hands like that are turning and forgetting that I don't have a camera. Or for instance, when he talks about grains, we spoke about wheat and barley. Those are the 2 main grains, but people ate many, many different kinds, and Isaiah knows them all, and he knows the differences between them. And in one sentence, he speaks about the nigella and the cumin and the wheat and the barley and the spelt, all the different kinds of grains that people eat. We already spoke about this phrase here about turning the desert into a place where trees that are not supposed to be in the desert manage to bloom and be successful. Notice how many kinds of needle trees he knows. The cedar, of course, the pine, the cypress. Again, trees that need the chill, that need a lot of water. If they grow in the desert, it means that the desert has turned green. 3,000 years later, Ben Gurion will have the same dreams of having pine forests all over the desert. And again, notice in one.
Sharona? Can anyone hear Sharona?
No.
No, we lost the sound.
No, no sound.
Okay, everyone, just hold tight. Let's see if she's still here.
It's like it's frozen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's there. We must have just lost the connection. I wish I had her phone number. All right. She must have lost her internet. All right, let's wait a few minutes and see if she gets back on. I think she was almost done anyway because it usually ends around 3 o'clock. Did anyone have any other questions? I only see 2 questions in the chat, but if anyone has any other questions they want to put in the chat for her.
I answered the question about the Hebrew name of that illegitimate king. That's
of Avimelech. Okay. All right. I'm not sure what to do because I don't.
It was terrific, by the way.
I know she is at her.
Packed. Is
What?
the book is her book full of this also?
What?
She has a book out there. Is that pretty much what she spoke about today?
I'm not sure. We'd have to ask her that.
She said something about her 4 chapters.
Yeah. I don't know
I
if
think
it was
that's
the
how many
chapter
chapters
or
her book has.
Huh.
It's okay. I just ordered it on Amazon anyway.
You know what? Give me a minute. I'm going to call Julia and see how to get in contact with Sharona. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Julia's on now.
That's not Julia, that's Pam.
Pam.
That's Pam. She's different. All right. Pam. All right. I'm just going to mute myself and try to get Julia.
I do know the rose of Sharon is a single petaled rose. It's not like the roses that we have in our gardens today. It's a flat little flower with single petals.
Like a lily. The lily of the valley.
Yeah. So I have an opportunity today to listen to our rabbi do a lunch and learn session because one of the members who goes is going to record it on her phone because they don't do cameras for us people who are still at home. And it's at 12:15, so I'm going to leave a little early today because she went to all this trouble to set up an audio.
Well, if anybody buys from Home Depot just before this program, which was why I was a couple of minutes late getting onto this program, I was listening to ZOA, and they had on the chap who created Home Depot. He's 93 now. What a man, what a program. If you can get and listen to that. I asked them if it was going to be available because I wanted.
Okay, we have an update. I spoke with Julia, who arranged for Sharona to speak, and she's calling Sharona now to see what's going on.
Oh, that's
So we
good.
can just
Hi.
talk in the meantime. There's Sharona. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay,
Lana.
Sharona, we can't hear you.
We can hear her. She's talking.
Yeah, there's no electricity at my parents' house. It just jumped off. So I don't have
I don't know if you're
internet.
trying to talk to us, but we can't hear you.
No, she
hear
lost
her.
electricity.
No, Alana, we can hear her just fine.
We can hear
Oh, I
her.
can't hear Gail.
We can
Sharona,
hear
speak
Sharona.
again so folks can see that, can hear
Okay.
that they hear you.
So I'm now over my phone
Okay.
because the electricity fell in the whole building.
No.
And because there is no electricity, there's no internet. So you can now see me, but I don't have my presentation, and I don't even know to what point because I kept on talking, not understanding that you can't see
Last
me.
thing people remember. Anyone can talk here.
Yes, you were at the whole thing of the cypress and the pine.
Okay.
But you were at the
So
aromatics.
it's one.
Aromatics.
She was talking about the plant, the trees in the desert turning.
Okay. So that was one before last. So I'm going to go to the last. We're going to do it very virtual. Imagine a picture with grapes and figs, a basket of very ripe, very appetizing grape and figs. And the phrase that goes with it, again from Isaiah, speaks about the eternal peace to come and about how people will not have war anymore, and should turn their swords into plows, and they should all sit beneath their vine and beneath their fig. And why is that a symbol of peace? That is a symbol of peace because both the figs and the grapes, you need to harvest in the summer, but in a very, very different character. The figs, you have to harvest the whole vineyard at once. In one day, you have to have a lot of manpower. You have to have everybody home. Nobody should be recruited to the army or any other reason not to be in their fields. The figs, as we mentioned before, every day you harvest a little more. Along a month or a month and a half, every morning you have to come before, as the sun rises, before the birds come, and pick the figs of that day. Two different characters. And that means that if you are enjoying the figs, it means that you every day at home. Again, it means that there's no war. So putting these things together, that you can have people there for a whole month of the summer, because in ancient times, the wars were in the summer. They weren't in the winter. There was a season of wars, so the chariots don't get stuck in the mud. So if all the people are home the whole summer long for the figs, and everybody's there for the one day that you pick the whole vineyard at once, it means that it's peaceful time. And that is the blessing that Isaiah tells us when he tells us, Yashav tachat gafno v'tachat tenato. And that was the last slide.
I'm glad you didn't get cut off too much earlier, Sharona. Thank you so much for this presentation. I know that when I go to Israel, I'm going to look at all the foliage much differently now. And it's just amazing to hear sort of the origins and the meanings behind and the former usages of some of these things that we know and we use today. So thank you so much for another amazing presentation. I know somebody asked about your book earlier when you were not on.
Book?
Yeah, somebody mentioned a book that you had written and asked if it was about this topic.
I did not write a book.
Well, I'm not sure who he's talking about. Maybe he'll unmute himself. We do have a couple of questions, and mostly people saying thank you. But one of the questions was from Sora Weiss. Does the date palm die when the center is harvested, or is it cut above the trunk? Monocots die when the center is cut.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but if you chop the whole top off, it will not renew itself. Okay, like a person, if you chop the whole head off,
doesn't grow back.
It cannot live. Okay, if you only take the center leaf, the one that is still closed, the lulav, it's like a haircut.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and she's not on to, I think that's what she meant, but she's not on anymore. And then Harry asked, when climate change with climate change, I thought your English was bad, Harry, which was surprising. With climate change, are any of the biblical plants becoming endangered in Israel?
That's a good question. One of our major problems because of climate change that we have invasive species of all kinds of bugs and insects that are, for instance, the palm. We have I don't know the correct word for this insect in English. The word in Hebrew is knima.
Pam,
It's I'm not sure what it is, but the palms in Israel were under a terrible attack, and hundreds, thousands died because of this insect that went into the trunk and ate the tree from within. And it took a few years, and we almost lost all the palms in Israel until they found an injection, that you have to give the tree every year to make sure that this insect doesn't go inside.
Wow.
But about climate change, I am not sure. I'm guessing that it could be mostly on the verge of the desert, where the desert is widening. That would be my guess. I don't think somewhere on the Carmel you feel you feel the difference in temperature less in the depth of the Mediterranean zone than at the edge of the desert. But I'll have to look into that.
I've heard of this a lot. Like even where I am, there were these lantern flies that were killing so many different kinds of plants. So, and it looks like Gail said, she said her almond tree died from a bacteria in the soil. Has this become a problem in Israel? Apparently it came from Italy. It attacks pomegranates trees too.
Yes. The invasive species is a major, major problem in the modern world. We take species of plants and animals from everywhere to places that they don't belong. One of the major reasons for disappearing of species is because of invasive species.
Right. Well, there's a bunch of people saying how wonderful your presentation was, including family. The Stein saying another enlightening presentation.
Very objective.
You are a gem. So the Steins are here watching you. And if anyone else has a question for Sharona before she leaves and light some candles so she can see in her apartment building, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And if not, we'll let her go light these candles.
Go home to my boxes.
You just moved today?
Today the moving truck came. So my new apartment is all boxes and my computer there is not connected. That's why I came to my room.
Thanks for doing this anyway. Despite all of these challenges, it was really amazing, and it's reflected in all of the
Thank
comments.
you very much.
Everyone, and just Sharona, so you know, I've had so many people private message me saying they wanted to watch it again. When's it on YouTube? So for anyone else who wants to know that you can watch our whole presentation again, probably in a few days, just check back on Volunteers for Israel's YouTube page.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharona, and good luck with your electricity.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Good luck with your move.
Yeah. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Oy. I don't know if Julia, because I called Julia and then Julia called her. Okay, so now we are going into what Steve calls schmooze mode. You're welcome to stay. We talk about when I do it, there's no topics that we need to discuss, but if there's stuff we'd like to discuss, we can. Our lives, new movies we've seen, what's going on. So we just kind of hang out. So if you'd like to hang on, you're welcome to. We usually get a COVID update from Jerry. We get weather updates. You know.
Don't forget to stop the recording.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. My second assistant. Okay.